Welcome to the Forever Cash Life Real Estate Investing Podcast with your hosts, Jack and Michelle Bosch. Together, let's uncover the secrets to building true wealth through real estate and living a purpose-driven life.
Hey, good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are joining me from. Hello, my name is Jeff Compas. I'm actually one of the master coaches here with, you guessed it, Man Profit Generator Coaching. So get to jump into some really great content today. What we get to dive into is sellers. This is a question that some of the community kind of asks. Well, how do you follow up with sellers? What's the nature of that? So we'll dive into that. Now, for those who are new to this, who haven't heard about Land Profit Generator, what we pretty much do is we show individuals how to get financial freedom through investing in land, investing in real estate. The beauty of it is I oftentimes think that when it comes down to my house, I have a fairly nice house, small house, not too big, but in the community, it has a zip codes that shack used to have the same zip code. Now, this house is like 10, 15 times bigger than mine, but nonetheless, we share the same zip code. And this is one thing that I always think about when it comes down to land is we share the same zip code, a decent house. You take my house and you put it in a lower level of the county, another zip code, wherever you want to call it, same exact house. You move the dirt, what happens to the value of the house? It plummets, right? You take a shack and you put it in Beverly Hills. What happens to that shack? The value skyrockets. So the value is not in the house. The value is in the dirt. So it's something that when it comes down to Land Profit Generator, it just clicked with me. It made sense. But what really made it exciting is when you had a piece of dirt, had a contract, flipped it, and made money off of dirt that you've never seen, that you've never touched, that you've never even been remotely close to it, and all you're doing is flipping papers. So it's something that's super exciting, something that I'm passionate about. And that's the reason why I'm grateful for the opportunity to be a master coach here with Land Profit Generator, to be privileged to help those reach their goals and so on and so forth. Now, one thing I can be completely transparent is us coaches, we don't have all the answers. We don't know everything, right? I have a certain niche that I've mastered that I feel very comfortable doing. But anything outside of that, I might not be the strongest person. But the beauty of it is the community. There's other experts, other individuals that I still learn from, and they might have an area that they've mastered. So that's the beauty of it. If I don't have an answer, if another master coach don't have an answer, we could definitely synergistically come together and get some really great content. So, but again, as I mentioned, wanted to celebrate our guy, Mr. Jack Bosch, and all he's done. Of course, behind every great man is an amazing woman. So Michelle Bosch is definitely a boss, and we're grateful for her as well. Now, but the content that we want to dive into is following up with sellers. So here in Land Profit Generator, what we do is we show individuals how to get properties under contract, right? Our approach is an actual letter. And the letter in itself is saying, hey, Mr. Person, we found your information from the county. Wanted to let you know that we are interested in possibly purchasing your land. Are you open to selling it? That's what the letter says. Trust me, it's a lot nicer than that. But in a sense, that's what we're asking. So now this person's going to get your letter and say, hey, you know what? Send me an offer. So then we send another letter. We send an offer. We might even communicate with them. And once we send that offer and they say, yes, you know what? I'm going to take it. I love your offer. Let's go ahead and sign it up. So at that point, they become a contract and they're a seller. Now, what happens oftentimes is now we have a seller, right? In our contract, what we're looking for is a buyer, right? For those who don't want to use their own money and close on it, which, hey, you can have $1 million, you can have $1 billion. The one thing I could tell you is if your money's tied up, your money's tied up. So you want to early on get accustomed to being able to get the property on the contract and also being able to find some buyers. Now, in that time, what do you do? right? That's the $1 million question. Now I have it on the contract. I have X amount of time to be able to market it. In our contract, we have a time frame that we like to go by. But let's say you get on the contract. How do what do you do? Those are some of the things that we dive into in coaching, and it's really, really helpful. One thing I just wanted to kind of share some nuggets with you is everyone wants to feel important, right? So the reality of it is when you're speaking to a seller and you're following up with those individuals or even getting it under contract, connecting with sellers, you want to be present and in the moment, right? I know this may sound like it's something very basic for those who are familiar with communicating and so on and so forth, but the reality of it is you want to be in the moment, you want to be listening to the seller, you want to be communicating with them. So that's the first thing that you want to do. Second thing you want to do is you want to be where your feet are, really be into the conversations. You want to get the sellers. You want to get them to start talking about themselves in a sense, but also talking about the land. But you don't want to exaggerate it. You don't want to exceed 5 to 7 minutes because you have a good list to go after. So that's some of the things. Ideally, you want to really learn specifically some things about the land. Now, personally, I myself, I don't need that much information. My due diligence is going to uncover a lot of information. I could stay on the phone with the seller for about 5-10 seconds, get what I need, and next. I had to develop that process just because, when you have quite a few sellers, you got to be able to create systems. So, but once you get it in the contract, that's where you would want to spend a little bit of time, developing those communications, really reaching out to them. Now, as far as like the frequency, right? You have it on the contract. How frequent should you reach out? Maybe this is a question that you guys might know. If you have an answer, go ahead and send it out. Is it once a month? Is it you reach out to them, you get it on the contract, and you don't want to say anything until you get a buyer, right? Those are some of the questions that you ask yourself. The reality of it is when you set up with your coach, you come up with a game plan on how you should be reaching out to your sellers, right? The thing is in all honesty, less is more, right? So in a sense, you can call your sellers or even just message them. Hey, just want to let you know we're currently going through title. Another thing is, what do you tell them when you reach out to them, right? Because I've been guilty of this in this past, where I told the seller too much information, and the seller was like, wait a second, you're doing X, Y, Z, just because I wanted to justify the fact that I was going to be taking some time. So I'm telling them, well, we got to do this, got to do that, got to do this. Sellers is like, wait, I didn't agree to all that. You know what? I don't want to be in the deal, right? So you don't want to just reach out to your sellers and tell them all this information. Just say, hey, listen, we're currently simple. Less is more. So that's one thing. How frequently do you reach out to them? It really depends on the seller. You might be reaching out weekly. Typically, I like bi-weekly, but that's something that you would want to keep in mind. But when you're initially talking to the sellers, learn a little bit about the property, right? How did you end up with the property? What are you looking to accomplish? I mean, you want to get some buying motives, and that way they might not even want money. You might want a nice little steak dinner just to get off, get done with this property. But so that's something to definitely keep in mind. There's a lot that goes into this. There's a lot of things you can do. You can mirror the tonality of the, how the seller's talking. If they're, so those are some things that you want to do. Initially getting it under contract as well as being able to keep it under contract. So certainly get in the habit of making an offer on all the properties. Well, Jeff, listen, man, this seller is wanting $1 million and this property is not worth more than $5,000. Well, hey, your offer doesn't mean that it has to be $1 million. You offer what the market is telling you. So that's certainly something that you would want to keep in mind. So we do in coaching, we have different follow-up systems, and that's something that your master coach or accountability partner could dive into as well. But you got your first offers, you got the second offers, you got the third offers. What does that look like? We break down what those look like, the different points. Is it just mailers? What's the different type of offers you could send out? let it be, a ringless voicemail, as well as messages. So there's different ways that you can stack up your offers, create a game plan. One thing I could tell you is follow up. There's fortune within the follow up. That's one area that a lot of people don't give much credit to, is follow up. So you have one individual who might have an acceptance rate of, I don't know, let's say 1%, 2%. You have another individual who have an acceptance rate of 10%. What's the difference if they have the same leads, the same amount? The person who follows up is the one who wins the game. Literally, they've done a research study that said people who follow up more than 7 times get 80% of the revenue when it comes down to those deals. So the cool thing about it is when it comes down to this business, when a person says, hey, this business is saturated, X, Y, Z, in some cases, if I'm working in an area and they've heard from other people, I kind of like that. Because for one, if they're picking up the phone and calling me because they want an offer, they didn't get their number or they didn't get what they were motivated or what they wanted to sell it for. So that's one thing. Then you're still interested because it's an action for them to pick up the phone and give me a call. So right there, I'm like, okay, well, you've taken the first step. You've already had offers. It sounds like you have a number in mind, and let's see if we can make it work. So that's one thing. Another thing is, in their mind, in some cases, they're like, well, Jeff, I've gotten your letter before. Meanwhile, this is the first letter I've sent them. They probably had 2 letters over the course of years, but those letters is what chip away. So in the event that you're maybe the 3rd or 4th investor, keep in mind your number is 7. So sometimes it's sooner, but 7 is kind of like that threshold as far as follow-up is concerned. So if you're following up and you are another investor, well, they turned down or they didn't follow through with 2 of them, they're picking up a phone call for you. So obviously they are motivated and looking to move forward. So that's certainly something. Now, when it comes down to handling those conversations, the cool thing about it is one of our resources that a lot of our students like to go to is how to handle the objections, right? When it comes down to these conversations, there's nothing new under the sun. Many of us coaches, many of our students, Jack himself, have been through some very similar conversations with the sellers. So you don't have to reinvent the wheel. All you have to do is get familiar with it, build your confidence. So one thing I always encourage is to check out that sheet of handling buyers and sellers objection, as well as doing one-on-one coaching with your master coach to be able to get them, how to communicate, what's the best way to connect with your sellers and so on and so forth, your buyers. So ideally, just to kind of wrap up, how do you follow up with sellers when it comes down to initially getting the property under contract? You don't want to spend too much time, but you want to build rapport. That is another thing that's going to separate the good from the great. Once they give you a call, you have their number and they're telling you that they're interested. So build rapport. That's something that, of course, comes with time. And those who have past experience can benefit quite a lot from how to build rapport and so on and so forth. So definitely want to build rapport. Once you get on the contract, you want to have a good follow-up system where you're just kind of checking in. You don't necessarily have to call them, but you just want to kind of reach out to them, say, hey, listen, things are going great, going through title. And then there's different things that you can kind of share with them. That's just an idea. You do want to kind of create a system and so on and so forth. But again, my name is Jeff. I'm actually one of the master coaches here with the LPG course. I'm grateful to be able to help students reach their goals and that financial freedom. And check us out. We absolutely love cultivating grown people. And I wish you all the best and enjoy the rest of your day.